Hello, everyone. My name is Dara, and this is Dear Hallmark. So, what we're going to be talking about today, because normally I talk to you guys about Hallmark Channel movies and things of that sort, but this is another installment in our Dear Hallmark Masterclass series. And you guys, I am so excited to have the writer of Unthinkably Good Things and the holiday stocking, Miss Cass Seegers Beatles, with us. Cass, how are you doing? Welcome to Dear Hallmark.
How are you? Thank you for having me.
I am doing so well, and thank you for being here. So, before we get into our conversation, I want to give you kind of an icebreaker question, just like a
Okay.
fun question. So, what
Okay.
is a song, an album, or an artist that you just had on repeat as of late?
Oh, as of late,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, I've had Snow Allegra
Oh,
as
okay,
of late. That's been an
okay.
artist. I'm kind of in a new relationship, so I think it's kind of like that whole lovey-dovey thing.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
yeah, that's who I've been playing as of late. Yeah.
That's cool. I just tripped and fell down a music soul child kind of thing. I've been listening to his older albums, and I was like, oh, I
Yeah, yeah,
miss
yeah, yeah.
this. So I've been in like a
Yeah, you
music
can't
soul
go
child
wrong.
vein.
Music Soul Child's great. Yep, 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 yep.
Yes.
And I love I the other day I listened to Corinne Bailey Ray's first album
Yes.
and I had forgotten about like how good it was. Like
Yes. Oh, you're gonna make me want to go back and listen to that one
yeah.
too.
And while I was in Miami, we played the Love Jones soundtrack. And I was
Oh,
like, oh my God. I was like, I forgot how great this soundtrack was. So that's kind of been my playlist as of late.
I love it. I love that so much. So, Cass, I did mention that you wrote and think Unthinkably Good Things, which was the debut movie for Hallmark's Mahogany film franchise line, as well as The Holiday Stocking, which was Mahogany's first Christmas movie. But of
Mm-hmm.
course, there was a path and a journey before you got to writing those two movies. So, could you take me as well as the viewers and the listeners on a journey of what it took for you to get to writing those two movies?
Man, it's been a journey. The journey started 15, but we won't
Yeah.
even go back that far. But no, I've been writing for a while. So I've written for Up TV, Aspire. I've written for TV1 for BET.
Mm,
And when Tony Judkins, who was at TV1 at one time, moved over to Hallmark and she started speaking about this brand Mahogany. We had a meeting and I shared my thoughts. She shared her thoughts. And she said, well, I think I'm going to have you do one of the projects. And I was like, oh, that would be amazing. I said, I love writing about strong women. Like most of my movies, I even got into this and starting a production company so that I could write films about strong women of color and our diversity and our layers, just something I
mm,
didn't think we saw enough of.
yeah.
And once we got started on the project, it originally wasn't going to be the launch project. And they turned the script
Oh,
in and they really loved it. And they just felt like with shooting overseas and these women that they wanted to cast, that it needed to be the launch project. So it became the first project
wow.
for the
Wow.
network.
And it's so beautiful. I told you this before we got on the air here, but when I was rewatching it, and it was funny because even me rewatching it, I was like, oh, I just want to protect it because it was like my first watch was just so ethereal. And I just don't want anything to like taint that first watch. But then I watched it again and I said, oh my gosh, I need to find out who wrote this. So and you talked a little bit about this when you were talking about what motivate like what in terms of like what's the word inspired you to write this one, but
Mhm.
what inspires you to write overall, like where did your love of writing stem from?
I think it's just natural. I've always been a storyteller. Like I
Mm.
go back now and I look at my like books, like things I wrote when I was in middle school and junior high school, and I had like a poetry book, and I was always writing these little short stories.
Wow.
So I feel like it's just something internal. It's just part of my
Mm.
fabric. And of course, I ended up not going to school for writing originally. I ended up going to school for clothing and costuming, and
What?
then while I know I was a costumer. I was a costumer for like 8 years, 8, 9 years, and
Wow.
met my producing partner Terry on a film that I was costuming. But I had written a book, and it's kind of like whatever you're supposed to do, you get back to it organically. And while I
Yeah.
was on the road costuming, I wrote a book, and that book ended up getting me into the film and entertainment industry, but getting me back to my love for writing.
So what is your
So
process
I
like
think
when you write books? Are you someone who plots out kind of every dot and tittle of your plot, your settings, your characters, or do you just kind of let the energy flow, fly by the seat of your pants and just start writing and let it come to you? What camp do you see yourself more
what's
so in?
funny, the very first book I wrote, which was A Girl Named Lily, which ended up becoming Pieces of a Man.
Okay.
When I wrote it, it was just fly by the seat because I didn't know. And
Mm,
it was a story I had to get out. I was young. I wanted to tell this crazy love story, part fiction, part true. And I just started writing. And then I got an editor who kind of fixed it and was like, you need to go back and do this. And
mm-hmm.
then I started learning more about structure. And so then I got a publishing deal. And with the deal, you end up having to have deadlines. So I
Mm.
couldn't just be like, oh, I'm just gonna write. Like I
Right.
really started, you know, outlining everything and knowing my beginning, my middle, my end. When you're working with a publisher, they want to know, what is this book about? How does it sum up? What are your arcs of your characters? So you have to kind of do
Mm.
that pre-work in order
Okay.
to really get an official light. And it's pretty much the
Wow.
same in scripting and in screenplay. So I no longer, when it's a finished project or a project that's for a network and or a publishing house, I definitely am more structured. I definitely
Mm.
write full outlines. I write full character bios. I literally down by the act or down by the chapter, what's going to happen in each chapter. And then I go back and fill in. But because I'm a creative, I'm always writing. So I have
Mm.
books all over the place. I could show you like just journals of just scribble
Mm.
scrabble of like little
Mm-hmm.
things I've just written down. If I say all the time, I'm like, God forbid, when I die, they're gonna probably look at my journals and be like, this is a crazy woman who just like wrote all of this stuff down. Because that's kind of what it seems like, the ramblings of a crazy woman, but eventually they turn into amazing stories.
Yes. So can you talk about that transition between writing for books and script writing, and how was that transition for you writing your first movie?
My first movie was Across the Bear, which was for Up TV, which was GMC at the time.
Yes.
And it starred Danielle Deadweiler, who of course is freaking
Amazing.
brilliant.
Yes.
But she was brilliant then. But so it was not I was gonna say it wasn't that it was the hardest, but I can definitely say it was challenging fitting a story into a limited amount of pages. When you're writing a book, you can go into detail with the worlds and
Right.
and give these huge descriptions. And when you are writing a screenplay, you don't do that as much because a lot of that is the work of the director. So you
Mm,
don't want to have
okay.
too much exposition on paper because you want to see it, not have them say it. Well, in a book, it's
Oh.
like, I'm sad. You say she's sad, or they're sad, or they walked into the room with a sad expression, or blah, blah, blah. And in a screenplay, you're not doing that. So that for me was the biggest challenge.
Mm,
Like, not putting too much exposition on the paper, not saying too much about my characters and letting their actions speak.
yeah.
I think that's a transition for a lot of writers. It's hard, whether you write novels or not. When I'm teaching my writing class, like a lot of newer writers, I mean, that's what we do. We want to put the words on the paper.
Yeah.
And so that probably was the biggest challenge for me. And then, of course, the challenge of being a writer and author. And I had a publishing deal. So I had books, I
Mm,
could just put them out. But then here I have this movie. It's like, well, how do I get this made? So
mm,
it's like anybody else, just kind of starting in a new field and trying to figure out how to sell your project, how to get
mm,
people invested in your words. That was probably the next biggest challenge, not so much the storytelling.
mm. Which can you talk a little bit about story? That's one of my favorite words. I just like I love anyone who has a passion for storytelling. What do you feel like with writing books or writing scripts is such a beautiful way to tell stories? Like what about that? What about those mediums do you love telling stories? Or why do you love telling stories through those mediums?
Well, I mean, for books, I mean, and I love books. I tell people all the time, like, if I have a choice, I'm writing a book, period.
Mm,
I
mm-hmm,
make a living writing screenplays, and I love that, but it's so
mm-hmm,
out of your control because you write it and then it has to go through so many other processes to get
mm,
on film. But what I think I love about books is the escapism. I
mm,
mean, and the escapism, and you have control over it. It's like you
mm.
put the words on the paper outside of an editor. It is your words. It's what came out of your head on paper. I love storytelling in general just because it our stories are important. Like, I don't know how
Mm,
I keep saying that, but it's like that's all we have. Even going back to griots and going back to African culture, it's like you don't know your history if you don't have these stories, whether they're fantastical, whether they're folk tales or whatever.
yeah,
You know, how do you learn about yourself? How do you learn about your culture and other people? So I try to put that into my stories, even if they're fiction and they're silly or they're whatever. I try to tell these stories of layered women who have normal circumstances. They're going through normal things that I think so many women are going through. So it's
yeah,
something about being able to pass down that knowledge or pass down those experiences
yeah.
that I love so much. Allowing us to be seen in our
Mm,
beautiful, multifaceted, amazing way
yeah,
just excites.
yeah.
So for books and for film, it though they both excite me. Film I love because it's film and it's visual. And
Yeah,
so the younger people take to it more than they do a book.
yeah,
But it's definitely a lot out of your control. Just as a writer, you have to lean on your director. Director leans on the actors. You have
okay.
studios, you have networks. Everybody has their say, and so you have to really learn how to be amiable and learn how to
Mm,
work in a group in order to get your project done. And in a novel, you can kind of be isolated in your island and just tinker
yeah.
away and come up with a project.
Wow. So how long does it normally take for you to write a script versus you writing a manuscript for a novel?
A script, it varies.
Mm,
Usually I'll give you kind of like what an outline, like if you get a contract. So I'll
mhm.
give you the contract way. You get a contract, you give them a synopsis, they say yes, they'll green light it. You have like 6 weeks to get your first draft, and then you have like 2 weeks to get your next draft, and then another 2 weeks to get your next draft. So
Wow.
it's a
Okay.
total of about 10 weeks, 12 weeks at the most, that you will have to get it from uh, treatment form or synopsis form to entire screenplay form.
Wow.
It's something that you're doing on your own. I mean, I might tinker with it for a year.
Mm,
I'll start.
yeah.
I usually get out the first draft within a month
Mm,
if I'm not
mm,
doing anything else. I'll
yeah.
just write it, and it's really just vomiting on the page, just writing it and getting it all out, and then I'll go back and rewrite 5, 6 times, and that may take
Right.
over the next 6. But unfortunately, when you have deadlines and you have contracts, fortunately have contracts, but
Yeah.
unfortunately that gives you a tighter timeline.
Yeah.
And books, I mean, um I'll work on a book for a
Yeah.
year or two. It just because right now I don't have deals, and so I don't have, I don't have a deadline. So I just
Right.
pick it up and write whenever I want to, keep it moving.
So with your screenwriting, and you mentioned this a little bit, what is your relationship like with the director and how long are you alongside the director, either pre-production or like while the movie is being shot? Are you still, in conversation?
Sometimes and sometimes not. With the
Okay.
holiday stocking, I was not. The director was Roger Bob, and he is one of my mentors. And
Mm,
we had a brief meeting. He asked me about a few scenes. He said, what are you thinking here? What do you think about this? What if I change it? What if I can't find this? And then that was
hmm.
it. Like I heard they were making the movie. I didn't go on set, and it was done. I was like, okay. And I honestly did not see it. And sometimes I'll watch them before, but I honestly didn't see the holiday stocking until everyone else saw it. Like
Wow.
I watched it when it
Okay.
aired. Unthinkably Good Things, because the director was my producing partner. It was Terry, and it was in
Yeah.
Italy. I was like, yeah, y'all are getting ready to shoot in Italy and think I'm not up to be on set.
I know that's right.
I'm getting ready to be on set. And because it was historic and it was Hallmark's first, Mahogany's first, we were on set to take pictures and do promo and that sort of thing. And they really supported it. And so that was amazing. And when I do projects and I work with Terry a lot, she's directed a lot of my scripts that I've written. We work together, we collaborate because we're producing partners and we have our company together. So I'll get the script, I'll pass it to her. She'll have notes, she'll ask about things, I change it. Sometimes she gets on set and things aren't, you can't get the location that you've written. For instance, the Unthinkably Good Things, originally when Erica ran out of house with the dog, it was written as a goldfish. But they don't have this really. Right. I was like, oh, it's so much funnier if it's a goldfish, but they don't have it. So she calls me. I'm not even there yet. And she's like, yeah, they don't have goldfish. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I don't know. They don't have goldfish over here. So we can't do goldfish. We have to do a dog. And I'm like, it's not as funny as a dog, but those things happen with the directors. And if you have a relationship with them, they'll go back to you, the writer, and say, hey, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just make the executive decision and change it. And you find out when you watch it, this is not what I put on there.
Right.
It happens.
And mind you, Unthinkably Good Things is still unthinkably good. So I really, really appreciated it. So can we electric slide into producing really quick? Because you mentioned your producing partner. Can you break it down like film industry for dummies? Because we have producing and then we have executive producing. When you are a producer, what does that mean?
There's executive producers who put money in films, and that's it. They don't ever come on set. They're investors. They just put the money in and they want to see their return. And there's that. I am a working producer. So if I'm producing, I am meeting with the casting directors. We're talking about who the talent is. We're looking at the schedule. We're making, hiring the line producer or the unit production manager to make sure that we don't go over budget, or to make sure that we have the budget, or if we have to cut money out of the budget. You are working and looking at locations and making sure you can get the locations and scheduling. So you're actively in today. When you are an active producer. But again, there are producers that make the deals. There are producers that I would call and say, hey, I have a script, or I have a project that's finished and I want to try to sell it to whomever. And they may make the deal. And for that, they get a producer credit, but they came on the back end.
Sure.
So it just really varies. It varies with producer, co-producer, associate producer. Sometimes it's just title. Sometimes it's like the grind.
Now, this made me excited because I saw a lot of your producing credits for the Up TV movies, which was formerly known as GMC. And I actually talked about this. I did an episode of my podcast talking a little bit about the history of Up TV and how it transformed from the Gospel Music Channel. And I mentioned all of these kind of Black-led, all Black kind of like play movies that they did. It was movies with shot in like
the forefront.
They were. They and it wasn't just anybody. Like they had LaToya Luckett, Rockman Dunbar, Angel Luke. Like they had so many people, and to know that you were at the helm of that, first of all, is just thank you, because me and my sister enjoyed watching each of them. I just finished my rewatch too of the For Richer or Poorer TV series that they turned into. Yes, I was having a moment. I was having a nostalgic moment. I was like, let me go back and watch that. But can you talk a little bit about your time, what it was like producing those movies? Because unfortunately, we don't see that now with Up TV. But that was such a beautiful time. So can you talk a little bit about your time working on those films?
Yeah, well, the first project I did with them was Across the Bear, which was a movie, and then they really wanted to get into doing slates of films, but they're expensive, and it was new for them. It was a new, window for them, so they couldn't put $500,000-$600,000 into every particular movie. They needed something they could shoot on a soundstage, so they partnered Terry and I, Nina Holiday, with Swirl Films, and Swirl does a lot of films.
Yes,
Eric and Keith, and they were in Wilmington at the time. So we had the content. I was the writer. Terry was working. She was a director. Sometimes she was writing. We were working together. and then they had the sound stage and the production equipment and the cameras. So we actually shot a lot of those in Wilmington, North Carolina, before Swirl moved to Atlanta, Georgia.
Wow. Okay.
And so it was such a fun time, just because we were able to crank things out and get things done. And we all were kind of learning at the time. Like, movies were new for me. Swirl was making the transition from music videos to movies and film. But we had a lot of contacts between my contacts, Terry's contacts, Eric and Keith's contacts. So we were able to call the favors to get the Golden Brooks, the Denise Boutte, the Essence Atkins. Like, we had some like major names.
Leon.
Lamont and Leon, Tommy, my love.
Yes.
And so, we were able to pull the favors, and we shot a lot of them on their soundstage, and Up TV really used that to launch. Well, that was what they used to transition from GMC, because they were just doing music, to doing Up TV. And so we built a really rich catalog with them, with Swirl and with Up, thanks to Brad Siegel and his team there.
Oh, if they were ever to like want to do that again, would you partner with them again? Because I'm like, why did they get away from that? It was so beautiful to watch.
I just think it's like everything transitioned, and the streamers and everything just everything kind of moved away from that direction. So I don't know. I probably wouldn't, but I have a lot of mentees and a lot of my babies who write. So I would, get a crew together to do it. I just would probably be too busy to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing. We want you busy. But can you give us, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but could you give us, if you were producing, let's say, another Mahogany movie, or you were producing another movie for another network, what would a typical day look like for you as a producer on that set?
If you're on set, well, producing starts way before you get on set. It starts so early in the game. So if it's not my script and it's someone else's script, then it would come to me. I would read the script. I would talk to whoever, the network, whomever is it. We talk about the budget. All that could be at the house, of course, or an office. But of course, now post-COVID, everybody's at home.
Yeah.
We talk about the budget, talk about casting. Who can we get? When do we want to shoot the film? If you're going to shoot it in April, we're going to shoot it in May, who's available? Then you would start casting, and then they would send over, then you start directing. So who's going to be the director? So once we got the director attached, then we'd give the director cast ideas that we thought about. Then the director comes with their cast they thought about. And then you finally get it all cast, get it all scheduled, and finally you're on set. Now that could take 2-3 months. That could take 3-4 weeks, depending on the budget. Smaller the budget, smaller the pre-production time. And then once you get on set, it's literally problem solving every single day. It's like you get on set every morning. It's like, where's breakfast late? Where's catering set up? Oh, it's raining. Okay, we got to move. The scene was supposed to be outside. Now we got to move it inside. We got to find a location. So it's constantly you're constantly moving. It's moving parts.
Yeah.
You have a babysitter. Somebody might be upset. You have to, you're working, making sure all the departments are good. So you're checking in, hair, makeup, y'all good? Y'all need anything? You good? Is it cold in here? Hot in here? Is talent on time? Anybody gave you any problems? Okay, let's move on. And then you move that to every single department, from, grip, gaffer, catering, hair, makeup, wardrobe, making sure they have all their clothes, making sure the talent is happy with the clothes.
Yeah.
The talent is not happy. Got to try to figure out, what's going to make her happy, what's going to make him happy. And then you have your locations, and that's usually owned by somebody. So then you have to make sure they're good. They got their contract. You signed the contract. Everything is good. Did y'all take pictures the way things were before you rearrange things? Okay. So it's literally like you're a mom, you're a parent to all the departments, making sure nobody messes anything up.
Yeah.
And you can make your sometimes you talk to the director and the AD about the time. How many pages are we shooting today? Did we start on time? If we didn't start on time, are we going to go into overtime? What scenes are we going to not get to today? If we go into overtime, how much is that going to cost? It's like, so it's an all day moving around parts. What are we on time? Are we looking good on time, guys? Okay. Are we going to have to push this to tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if what is that going to do for talent? Does that give us an extra day with this person? Extra day means more money. So it
Right.
all equates down to trying to keep everything under or at the budget. That's what the
Wow.
producer has to do. Do not want to go over budget. And every decision usually has something to do with the budget.
Mm. What, if you can speak on it, what would you say, looking back on your career, was your most challenging film to produce? Like you just kept, it was just obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, but you finally saw the light, but it was just super challenging.
You, you know what? I would have to say it was the most fun, but definitely the most challenging. Digital Lives Matter. And it was not for a particular network, it was independent. And the
Mm.
reason why, because it was Terry's first directorial, it was her directorial debut. We shot it as an independent film. We had newer actors. We had
Mm-hmm.
DC Young Fly and it, B. Simone,
Okay.
but they were new. Like DC
Sure.
wasn't DC now. And so that was challenging for Terry. She needed the time to work with them, but of course, time equals money.
Mm.
And we didn't have a lot of money. It's like literally, we were like, "Oh, we're going to shoot this movie with $200,000. Like, let's just shoot it. Let's just make it happen." So that's why it was the most challenging because we were pulling favors. We were shooting at friends' houses. We were like, it was freezing cold when it shouldn't have been. It was like
Mm.
January, but it was like bitterly freezing cold. So, and a lot of the scenes were outdoors. So we were
Yeah.
outdoors. It was cold. Thank God, Ricky Hughes, who is another amazing producer, she actually produces all of Dave Chappelle's content now.
Oh, wow.
She produced that with Terry and I. And so it was really she and I producing it. Terry was directing it. And it was just challenging because we had very little funds. And we were just trying to make this incredible film.
Yeah.
So whenever you don't have the resources or you don't have the finances, it's just challenging because you are figuring it out. You are asking people to do things for free,
Mm.
and people don't like doing things for free. And
Mm.
so it just makes it harder. When you've got bigger budgets and bigger money,
Yeah.
and not to say that that makes it easier, but it definitely makes that whole ask easier, and your departments are bigger, so you have help.
Yeah.
When it's smaller, you don't have help. So I would say that was definitely the most challenging, but very rewarding. I mean, we still created this amazing project, and it was, I mean, Nav and DC and Emmanuel Hudson, like they're so funny. We
Yeah.
literally laughed like the whole
Yeah.
entire movie. We laughed. So it was fun, but it definitely was probably the most challenging for sure.
Do you ever find like since you got your start in costuming, do you ever see that rearing its head some like when you're on set sometimes or when you're
Always, always. I literally was directing a movie for Lifetime and TV One. It's for TV One and Lifetime. It'll be out this year called A Mother's Intuition.
Mhm.
And I did it last year. And I would like, we would start shooting or they would come down and I'm like, that's not what she had on in that scene. Like, that's not, the continuity's off, or this is,
Mm.
because I'm used to doing that. So I literally was
Yeah.
with the and I was like, okay, guys, let's go over all of this stuff. Like, did you tag your stuff? Did you? And then I was like, I'm sorry. I know I don't want to, like be all up in your department. However, I started in this department. So I just want to make sure you guys have your stuff organized, or what kind of organization are you using? Because this is not the right outfit for this particular scene. So it does happen. Mostly just in that regard. I don't usually get involved with the costumer in the very beginning unless I'm
Mm.
directing it. It is my lookbook, and then we're discussing the looks for the characters.
Hmm.
But outside of that, I don't. I think wardrobe and costuming, I'll say it all day long, one of the hardest things to do on set.
Wow.
Hard. It is. They're the first ones there setting up. You're steaming, you're ironing, you're getting all the stuff together. You have to fit talent. You have to fit talent and make them happy. You know what I mean? And you
Mm.
have to make them look good. So all of their insecurities, and we all know as women and men, we have insecurities about things we
Yeah.
don't want to wear. Like to wear. I don't look good in this and blah, blah, blah. You have to deal with all of that and then still with the director who wants them to look a certain way. So
Mm.
you're a psychiatrist and you're a psychologist and you are physically labor. You're like rolling in racks and you're like rolling in a steam iron. It's just brutal. I just give my hats off to any wardrobe and costumer. I literally did it for years and was like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I was like, this is
Wow.
hard on set. I don't want to be able to set 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't want to be the first one here setting things up. No, I don't want to do it.
But you transitioned beautifully into writing with these movies. And with
Yeah.
with that, with I have to keep saying it, unthinkably good things, because literally now holiday stocking, I don't want to brush that to the side because that had so much heart, starring Nadine Ellis, Tamala Jones, BJ Britt. They I loved it. I love what Mahogany is doing, where they're bringing over actors who may not have worked for Hallmark before, but people in the Black community know who they are. So
That was
it'll,
Tony's vision. Yep,
yeah,
that's her vision. And I love her what she's doing with the brand. I just think, I mean, just not just my movies, but like all the movies that air on Mahogany.
yeah,
To Her with Love was really good. Like I'm just excited about the brand and all the stuff that's coming this year. We got stuff coming this
yes.
year. So
Are you are you writing another one for Mahogany this year?
I'm writing two more for Mahogany this year.
I'm excited.
And one of them is a sequel. I literally texted and was like, can I tell them? Can I say this on the podcast? She was like, it's fine. You can say it. So you actually are the first one to hear. You're the first one to know. We're doing the sequel. It'll come out Christmas this year. So.
Oh, that's so okay. All right, we gotta calm down now. Okay, so so Cass, when you're writing Hallmark Mahogany movies, because they're different from like they're different from like a BET movie or a VH1 movie.
Right.
So, what is your inspiration when you sit down to write a script for a Hallmark Mahogany, and what is important to you too when you're writing a script for Mahogany?
Well, they have the basic principles there. They are love, sisterhood, faith, and family. Those are pretty much the core like bullets and the core principles that they want to put in each of the film. Sisterhood is definitely ranking up there as top, sisterhood and love.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's I kind of start with those kind of stories, like, oh, okay, me and my friends, me and my sisters, like,
Yeah.
what are things like, it's a trip, or what are things that we're going through, if it's marriage or having a family or falling out with your friends or your own insecurity. So I kind of start with things that I know Black women are dealing with.
Mm.
Thankfully, they're not dealing with like 19, 20-year-old Black women. We're dealing with grown women, like 30 and above.
Yeah.
And, we got families, we got people who can't have children, we got people who want to have kids, we've got, widows and miscarriages, just all of the things that we go through as women, period, not just Black women, but just as women. But then let's make it even smaller, and we think about the problems and the challenges and the beauty that we have in our own community of women as color. And I just kind of take that and I usually build a story around that. And as opposed, if you're on BET, like I think about sensationalized stories and trauma and just everything is a little bit bigger and fantastical, and you'll build a story around that. So it's not as grounded in relationships as it is Mahogany level. It's really about life and relationships, and they want the stories to be relatable and have those principles. So I kind of start there, and then I talk to Tony, and she's Tony Judkins, who is the SVP of Mahogany. And I talk to her and I say, this is what I'm thinking. Or sometimes she comes to me, like the ones that we're doing this year. She came to me with the big idea and said, oh, I want to do something in this world and I want to do something over here. And then from there, we kind of, come together with a story. And then I give them an outline of the story, and then the team, not just Mahogany, the whole Hallmark team has to read it, greenlight it, and then they say, okay, we're good. We can go to script.
Oh, beautiful.
So it's a process. It's not as easy as you just, I'm going to write something down and then you just start writing. It's never that easy.
Now, how many, if you can disclose this, in terms of rewrites for like Holiday Stocking or Unthinkably Good Things, how long did that take through the process to really get it to where both you and the network thought this is what we're going to green light, this is what we want to show the people?
It's usually 3 months. Like I said, my contract is usually for 12 weeks.
Okay.
So it's usually that. It's three months is usually the time you get. kind of go from beginning to end. Sometimes it may bleed into 14, but it's never longer than that.
Okay.
Just because they have a shooting schedule. So if we're shooting something now, I'm writing something now that you want to air for Christmas, then it's like, I'm writing it now. I have to be done. I have to be done by a certain time because I have to shoot it at the top of summer so that it can get shot and edited so that it can get into programming by September, October in order to air by November.
Wow.
So they work backwards, and if it's, most of the things that you are writing, 9 times out of 10, the network has an air date in mind. Oh. So they work backwards from the air date. Okay. 9 times out of 10. Now, if you pitch something, they may not have an air date. I do have a project I'm producing that I'm not writing. It was a story of mine, but I'm not writing it. That we sold to Paramount, and it's starring Storm Reed. Oh, yeah. And we've hired a writer, and I think we gave her like 4 or 5 weeks to kind of come up with her first draft. But we don't, obviously that's one, we don't know when we're shooting it this year. It doesn't have an air date, but it's also Paramount and it's not a network. Right. Networks usually work on tighter time frames.
Okay.
And studios. Wow.
I wish we had like 85 hours, but we don't. Miss Katz, I just want to thank you so much for dropping all of these gems and even behind the scenes nuggets of just your writing journey, your producing life. But before I let you go, I just want to ask you, for anyone, and for me selfishly, who is a writer or who wants to become a writer, whether author or screenwriter, what advice would you give to them?
I definitely would say write. I have a lot of people that approach me and they're like, I want to write. And I'm like, well, why are you not writing? Like, right. Because if someone wants to see your sample and you've not written anything, then it's like you're still in this phase of wanting to be a writer. So write, don't feel like you have to write and perfect it. Like, oh, I got to just get it perfect. You have to start somewhere. I go through 5, 6, 7 drafts. So no screenplay I ever write is the right screenplay when I first write it, but there's something there. Definitely study. I would say I tell a lot of my writing students get Save the Cat because it's about structure for screenplay. And I believe they have Save the Cat for novels. They have one for TV. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my little bookshelf over here. But they definitely have it for screenplays. And if you love books and you want to write books, I mean, read and kind of get your idea of what your voice is. Don't say you reading because I want to write just like this person. Yeah. But I think the more you read, or you can kind of discover your own voice, be in tune with that voice, write to your voice. Don't try to write like Cass or write like Maya or write like Toni Morrison. Don't try to write like all these people. Write like yourself. You know what I mean? But the only way you can work that muscle and know is to do it. So you have to do it. Like, even if you're writing short stories, just try to write a short story a week.
Yeah.
If that's what you want to do and you really write novels, I mean, the way things are now, you can publish your own thing. You can go to Amazon. You can go to Create Space, I think is Amazon's self-publishing arm, and publish your own book. So there's nothing stopping you now. You can read it yourself and put it up as an audiobook. Like, there's just so many avenues as opposed to when I was writing my novels. So I would absolutely say write, like, just do that, just write. And then for screenplays, definitely study. It is about structure. It's more challenging to get noticed. However, if you do have something, then you can at least start approaching production companies and agents. If you go to imdb.com, you can look up people's managers and agents and production companies. You'll see all the ones. Find movies that you like, find the production companies that are making those movies, and usually their contact is on there, and reach out to them. You won't get a manager immediately. You won't get an agent if you don't have a resume. If people try to jump and get like, oh, I want to be signed with CAA or William Morris or whatever, that's hella hard. It's hard even if you have a resume to get signed with them. So don't bank on that, and don't wait on that either. You have to take your career into your own hands. Even as a seasoned author and a seasoned writer, I'm of the motto of my friend Ernestine Morrison. She's like, create, don't wait. So I'm even of that motto. Projects that I want to get done that the studios haven't bought. They've passed on them. So I'm like, okay, well, let's find the money and go make them. So
Mm.
that doesn't stop. That never stops. You have to bet on yourself. And that's what I would tell writers.
Ooh, do y'all hear this? Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Do you have a website or social media that you want to give to the people so that they can contact
I
you or stay up to date with
do.
what you're doing?
Let's see. I do. On my website, it is the same as my social media. It's Cass Siggers. So it's CASSIGERS.com. So that's my website. Nina Holiday Entertainment, and that's ninaholiday.com. That's for the production company. And my Insta and Facebook, I think it's just Cass Siggers. I know my Insta is just Cass Siggers. I don't know about Facebook. Like it might be, it's still my name though. Regardless, it's still my name. It's no weird, like I'm a writer, got cast.
Right. Oh, well, thank you so much again. And for the viewers and listeners, all of those links will be in the description box if you're watching via YouTube, or the show notes if you're listening via podcast. So I hope you guys enjoyed. She's Cass, I'm Dara, and I will talk to you guys in the next episode. Ciao, my friends.
Thank you, Dara.